Hello, everyone, and welcome to your Saturday Evening Post Week in Review. My name is Chris Wakefield, and I am the marketing manager for the Saturday Evening Post.
I'm Nicholas Gilmore, and I'm a staff writer at the Post.
Troy Brownfield, also staff writer.
A lot to get to this week. We're going to talk about the Clinton impeachment, marijuana legalization, and a lot more. Lots of drama going on this week here at the Post. First of all, let me tell you, like always, you can become a member of the Saturday Evening Post. 1 year for only $15. That gets you unlimited access to our online archives, 6 new print issues of the Post magazine in your mailbox every single year, exclusive member benefits, and a lot more. SaturdayEveningPost.com/subscribe. 1 year, only $15. A really good deal. Nick, I'm going to go to you first. You have a piece coming up this week about the history of sleep in America.
Yes, sleep aids.
Sleep aids.
So it's a century's search for the best night's sleep. And obviously this is something that's kind of plagued us as a nation since the get-go. Not being able to get enough sleep, insomnia, various reasons. But it's actually gotten worse. In the last 100 years, we've been getting 20% less sleep.
Why is that?
As a people.
TV's better?
TV's much better than 100 years ago.
So many reasons, I guess. Economically, culturally.
What was the word on sleep aids 100 years ago?
So the thing was, with advertising how it was like everything was sold as helping you sleep. Insecticide, pain relievers, milk of magnesia. I mean, if you could sell something, then you could sell it to help people sleep.
But it might be interesting to know that even 100 years ago in America, this was a problem. We're talking pre-Depression, pre-World War II.
And a lot of that comes from like a lot of anxiety from moving to cities, the urbanization. People were used to mainly rural living. A lot of people were. And as people flocked to cities at the turn of the century, there were a lot of specific anxieties and fears and stresses that came from that, and I think a lack of sleep was one of them.
Do you lack sleep because you live in the city?
I don't think the city has ever hurt me as far as sleeping goes.
Where did you live in, like Plainfield?
Yeah, but I've lived in
Not the city. It's literally a plain field.
That's right. No, it's. I live in a neighborhood with about 300 houses, so you can have a lot of activity and stuff. But I live in dorms in the downtown of the city and so forth. And the city stuff has never bothered me. I'm actually like a notoriously heavy sleeper. My problem is the sheer amount. Like I always sleep smaller amounts than I probably should, which I think is probably part of that problem too. Is people sleep less and less over time. People
They get used to too little sleep.
Well, if you read Nick's piece over at SaturdayEveningPost.com, we've got an insecticide that will take care of that right away.
Sleep be gone.
Go look on the website for Nick's piece. Troy, we are approaching an auspicious anniversary this week of the Clinton impeachment.
That's right. 20 years ago this week, the Clinton impeachment trial began in the Senate. And
I'm just going to sit back and let Troy...
Happy anniversary.
It's a pretty complicated story overall because it involves a lot of tangled plot lines. The easiest way to put it is that there was a investigation into the Whitewater land deal already going on with Special Counsel Kenneth Starr. In 1994, Paula Jones filed a harassment civil suit against Bill Clinton for events that occurred in a hotel room meeting between the two of them years previously. And then, during the course of interviews regarding the Jones lawsuit, the already rumored Monica Lewinsky affair came out. And Clinton lied on the deposition about the affair he was having, lied to the American people, and so this kind of gave the ammunition to the special counsel's investigation to go after charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. So these went to the House voted on them. They voted that President Clinton was guilty of these two charges, and I believe they're decision came in December of 98, and then it rolled over into January of 99 when it was taken up in the Senate. There's an actual trial. Judge William Rehnquist from the Supreme Court officiated. There were what they called managers that were people from the House. Representatives came over. Lindsey Graham was one of them that acted as functional prosecutors in the case. Clinton had his own defense team, and this was, adjudicated in the Senate, at the end of which the Senate ultimately votes to acquit Clinton.
By how many votes?
Okay, there were 45 Democratic senators seated at the time. Okay, they needed 2/3 in order to convict. On the one count, it was a 45-55 vote. The other count was a 50-50 vote. So, you didn't have, enough, but you also had Republican senators come over to vote against the obstruction charge. Notably, one of the interesting ones is Fred Thompson, who used to be on Law and Order.
Right.
He voted not to convict, and so without that,
I mean, they didn't even have near enough.
No, they didn't have. They did not have.
So what
near
new do we know 20 years later? Things always come out over the decades. Any new information that we're learning in the last few years about this?
I think that probably the most interesting thing about it in retrospect is sort of Monica Lewinsky's story, because she went from being really kind of a figure of ridicule in the media and so forth to kind of having her image rehabilitated and becoming not necessarily a patient zero for what would become the Me Too movement and so forth, but she's probably patient zero for cyberbullying.
Right.
Because the nascent internet really, really was brutal to her. And over time, she's gotten a chance to tell her story. She's written books. They did the most recent documentary and so forth. And you really do understand, she had a really rough time. She was really taken advantage of by powerful people on both sides. And I think that you have a better understanding of her now than you would have 20 years ago. Especially there's an effort made to tell her story.
Do you have any memories, and this is 20 years ago, of that time period? It was a very, for me, being I would have been 12 years old at the time, I was very worried at the time of what was going to happen to the country, and are the Russians going to come overseas and get us because we're all distracted by this trial?
I mean, I was 1 year old.
Okay.
So, no, I was 7. But I don't have any memories of that. I have memories of remembering that Bill Clinton was president as a child, or of knowing that, being aware of that, but I must have been pretty shielded from. This is my first time hearing about this.
Oh.
The impeachment? If you want to read Troy's piece, go over to SaturdayEveningPost.com. Another interesting piece over at SaturdayEveningPost.com is by our archivist Jeff Nielsen. Wrote about he linked the current effort to legalize marijuana to the struggle to end prohibition back in the 1920s and 30s, and kind of shows a great story of those two different paths. And if you want to legalize marijuana, maybe you should consider taking this path. Have you read this piece by Jeff?
Yes, I have. It's really interesting, too, because you had a similar moral panic with alcohol that you had with marijuana, which is kind of interesting because it was legal for so long.
Yes.
And a lot of the things that they were talking about happening functionally did not, and so when they go back to say, into prohibition and so forth, apparently these problems never really existed and all went away as soon as prohibition was ended because the things that they feared to come to pass did not happen. And so I think that you have a similar thing. You have multiple states at this point that have legalized marijuana, as well as Canada, and you're not seeing a sudden rash of, zombie crime outbreaks related to marijuana or anything. It's silly on the face of it.
And there are some studies that link a rise in marijuana use to a rise in anxiety. I would posit that people are anxious when using marijuana because it's still illegal.
There's
on a federal level.
rise in anxiety across the board anyway.
Also
you could
true.
link that to technology.
Hamburgers
as much as you could to marijuana.
Do you think we'll ever see federally legalize and regulated marijuana in our lifetime?
Yeah, I do. I think that marijuana is a little bit different than alcohol, well, in several ways. Particularly because the history of criminalization of cannabis in America is deeply embedded in racism.
Yes.
And that goes from criminalizing it through enforcement, through decriminalization.
Even to this day, yes.
And I mean, I'm not aware of any aspect of alcohol prohibition that followed that, or that was parallel to that in any way. But I think such racialized topics are always pretty complicated and take a long time to.
So here we are,
headway, but-
80 or 90 years post-prohibition, and we sit down in front of our audience every week and drink beers. Will there be a Saturday Evening Post Weekend Review 80 years from now where people sit down in front of the audience and smoke joints?
I mean, what were you guys doing in California?
I think that it will make the show much, much longer.
It will be a very slow show, and there'll be food everywhere. Again, you can read Jeff's piece on marijuana legalization over at SaturdayEveningPost.com. Now, it is time for my favorite segment every single week, where we get to complain, bitch, moan, whine. It's called Don't Add Me. Things that are just getting on our nerves, getting under our skin, that we have a strong opinion on, and we don't want to hear your side of the story. I'm going to start with Troy. What's getting on you this week?
I have a two-headed sports one. I think that when you look at the sports stories of 2018, when they talk about what the biggest stories were, I think the absolute resurrection of the Indianapolis Colts and
It's too local. Move on.
the explosive, nature of the Pacers was totally overlooked by national media. The Colts were picked to win 2 games this year, and Andrew Luck.
They won 2 games.
And a bunch more. It's completely reborn. Is already won in the playoffs. That's a huge story. Completely ignored. Similarly, last year the Pacers were completely written off. Made it to the playoffs with a revitalized lineup. This year they're killing it. They're in 3rd place, but all the media wants to talk about is the fact that Cleveland has only won 8 games.
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Why do you think that is? Why are the Midwestern teams getting the shaft a bit?
I think that when it comes to national sports leagues, first of all, Midwestern market teams usually suffer from a national media
With
bias.
the exception of Chicago.
With the exception of Chicago, and that's can be linked to modern times, just to the Jordan era, because they've certainly had some really terrible teams in between then and now. But they want to look at the Lakers first. They want to look at Boston and the Knicks first. Even years that the Knicks have been absolutely terrible, they've gotten a lot of headlines. And if you're going to write about sports, look at where the good teams are. And we've had fabulously bad teams too. Even 2011, we were terrible. So if you look at that, just look at it fairly. If you want to talk about sports, you don't have to talk about dynasty teams if they're doing badly. Shift and talk about a team that's doing well. If Detroit Lions suddenly start winning 12 games a season, talk about that. But, be judicious in what you actually write about. You don't have to write about a dynasty team when they suck. You can switch and write about someone else.
Nick, what's on your nerves this week?
Well, my topic is, it's a different sport. The sport of cinema awards season.
Yes.
So the Golden Globes just happened.
Yes.
And there's a lot of talk about Bohemian Rhapsody. And I just want to curb that right now. Because, after the Golden Globes, there's always a lot of people have their focus misguided on certain movies because the Golden Globes, I don't want to say they pick commercial popular movies in place of more sophisticated cinema. But I kind of did.
You think you think Bohemian Rhapsody was overrated?
Yeah.
Too poppy, too.
And this at this time in the award season, a lot of people were focusing on La La Land last year, talking about that as far as like Oscar talk. And I liked The Favorite.
What was the favorite? In that
No, the
category?
movie The Favorite.
Oh, The Favorite.
Yeah.
The movie The Favorite. So that's what I'm pulling for. But no, I think Bohemian Rhapsody was overrated. I mean, it's a rock star biopic. We've seen it a million times, and I think it's kind of natural this early in the award season to be looking at movies that won the Golden Globes, talking about them in terms of what they might win at the Oscars. But I'm going to go ahead and predict that it's going to be a bad Oscar year for
Wow.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
All right, and incidentally, I tweeted it too, the star, Bohemian Rhapsody, Rami Malek, today actually. So there's some Twitter bait for you. Go look at my Twitter and see.
You
I
tweeted to him?
I sure did.
Well,
we're not going to discuss what the tweet was, but I did.
I just want to kind of piggyback on Nick's sentiment here that you can have a standout performance in a middling film.
And it not be the best picture.
Right. Like Malik, as Freddie Mercury, that's incredible.
Right.
But you don't have to honor the entire picture for one standout performance. That's why you have the categories of the different awards.
My Don't At Me is going to be my Don't At Me for the rest of the year, every week until this issue is fixed. I'm going to go at NPR and Planet Money. Last year, they ran a show twice that said businesses might be out of work and out of business, like the Saturday Evening Post. They called us out of business. They said we weren't around anymore. I emailed, I called, I tweeted saying, hey, we actually are still in business, the Post, and to this date, I've heard nothing. Every week until this gets fixed, I am coming for Planet Money, NPR.
Who's that host on Planet Money?
There's a whole bunch of them. I don't know. They're probably out of business by now anyway, so who cares? I'm coming for you every week this year until you fix this.
We are coming for you, Planet Money.
Don't forget, you can send us your questions and comments, podcast at SaturdayEveningPost.com. Nick, where can we find you on Twitter?
I am at Darwin Jr., Darwin with a Y.
At Troy Brownfield, immediately followed by at NPR, at SatEvePost. We exist.
Yes, exactly. You can find me at Wakefield Report. You can find the Post everywhere online at Saturday Evening Post. Don't forget, a 1-year subscription to our magazine that still exists and is still in business, NPR Planet Money, is only $15. Hell, Planet Money, I'll send you a free subscription if you acknowledge that we still exist. $15, SaturdayEveningPost.com/subscribe. You get the magazine, unlimited access to our archives, member benefits, and a lot more. SaturdayEveningPost.com/subscribe. That's all we have this week from Arizona Brewing. We will see you all next week.